Chapter number 1, Cell Physiology. In cell physiology, we will first of all read about all the organelles, in which number 1 there is cell membrane. Cell membrane are composed of primarily phospholipids and proteins. Cell membrane is made up of lipid bilayer. Number 1, lipid phospholipids have glycerol backbone, which is hydrophilic, water-soluble head, and two fatty acids tail, which are hydrophobic, water-insoluble. The hydrophobic tails face each other from a bilayer. Lipid-soluble substances, which are oxygen, carbon dioxide, steroid hormones, across the cell membrane because they can dissolve in the hydrophobic lipid layer. Water-soluble substances, for example, sodium, chlorine, glucose, water, cannot dissolve in the lipid membrane because they cross through water-filled channels or pores or may be transported by the carriers. Number two, cell membranes contains of proteins. Proteins are two types in nature. Number one, they are integral proteins. Number two, they are peripheral proteins. Number one, integral proteins are anchored to and embedded in the cell membrane through the hydrophobic interactions. May span the cell membrane include the ion channels, transport proteins, receptors, and guanosine 5 triphosphate. It Peripheral proteins are not embedded in the cell membrane, are not covalently bound to the cell membrane components, are loosely attached to the cell membrane by electrostatic interactions. Intracellular connections. Tight junctions, zonula occludens, are the attachments between the cells. May be intracellular pathways for solutes depending on the size, charge, characteristics of the tight junctions may be tight, impermeable as in the renal distance tubule or leaky permeable as in the renal proximal tubules and gallbladder. Gap junctions are the attachments between cells that permits the intracellular communications. For example, permit the current flow and electrical coupling between the myocardial cells. Characteristics of different types of transport: simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, primary active transport, co-transport and counter-transport. In simple diffusion, the electrochemical gradient will be downhill. It will have no carrier mediation. It will have no metabolic energy and no sodium gradient. Simple diffusion will be done. Facilitated diffusion